when real estate gets really hard and you haven't had a deal in months, what do you want? And for me, I knew that it was the atmosphere, and I needed a place that I could come to and find support and find like-minded individuals, and there was music playing. That was going to be the first thing with my name attached on it that went online, and I wanted to make sure that the first photos associated with Sean Bozigian online weren't a hoarder house, right?
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. I appreciate you for tuning in today. We have the one and only Sean Bozigian. I pronounced that right, didn't I?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Perfect. I feel like there's been times where I haven't pronounced that right. But, man, I really appreciate you being on the show. You know, Sean is a guy that he's actually on our real estate team, and he actually was Rookie of the Year last year, which is really, really cool and a heck of an accomplishment. You did $7.5 million in production. Was it 7.5?
7.5, yeah.
$7.5 million in production, year one. As an agent. And not only that, dude, but you know, you have a cool story. I'm excited to jump into that in a little while. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you own a couple of rental properties. And I'm excited to talk about that, you know, why you got into real estate. I know that year two, you're going to blow it out of the park. And I'm just excited to share that with the world, and hopefully, you know, somebody watching or listening can get some value. And I just appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. You've had some big names on here recently, so I know I'm not necessarily your typical guest. So congrats on scaling the podcast to where it is right now, and I'm happy to be here and extremely grateful. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Excited to maybe shed some light on somebody who's just getting into the industry and provide some value for some of those, because I know when I was starting out, I would have loved that. So hopefully I can do that a little bit today.
You absolutely will be able to. And man, you're really humble, but you're just big a name as anybody else has been on here. So I look at everybody the same way, man. Everybody's just a human being. Yes, and some people are a little further along in their journey. That's the only difference, you know. So I learned a long time ago, man, that nobody's special on planet Earth. I really don't believe that. Now, there might be people that are a little better at golfing than me, okay? So, so you might be a little more special than me in that area. But, hey, I think with practice, I might be able to get a little bit better at golfing. But
yeah, we're going to get you there soon. It's a tough game, but yeah, it's one of my goals this year alongside the real estate stuff is to get Austin out on the golf course and start shaving some strokes off that handicap.
I can't wait, dude. I had my dad bring my golf clubs in today.
I saw them.
They're in my office. I told him because he's going out of town. I'm like, dude, I need the clubs. I got to go practice.
There you go.
So, man, you did, year one, right? And I remember, it's so funny because I remember it was in our other office, right around the hall here. Yeah. I remember doing a Zoom call with you with Jim Wayner. And I remember, I think it was in December of 2021. Correct me if I'm wrong. You might remember better than me.
It was. Yep, you got it.
But you were looking for a team to join. You were looking for somewhere to go, right? And you're like, look, in January I'm going all in, right? Mm-hmm. And I talk to a lot of people that say that, by the way, right? Like, man, I'm going all in, And but obviously in hindsight, like you weren't kidding around, right? Like you did it. You did what you said you were going to do. You showed up on January 1. And you went all in, right? And you beat everybody on the team in terms of, being a Rookie of the Year, right? And I have no doubt in my mind that you'll do incredible this year. So, like, I want to talk about that a little bit and just jump right into the nuts and bolts of, like, what in the heck allowed you to do that, right? And I'm sure it is a bunch of different stuff. So I'll just open it up to you for a second. Talk to me about what you did on January 1. Like, what separated you from everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think there's a number of different things that go into it, right? And I think it all boils down to your work ethic. And in this industry, you find out very quickly that it's tough. And if you don't go all in from day one, it's easy for this industry to chew you up and spit you out. And I knew that coming in. Thankfully, I'd been surrounded by some people leading up to that point that had groomed me enough to know what to expect. So I'm sure we'll get to it, but I was coming from a career that I loved, and I think I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder going into real estate. Just I was so dedicated to make it work, and there really wasn't another option that I knew that I had to go all in, right?
Yeah.
So thankfully, I was able to surround myself with people like you and our entire team, which helped shorten that learning curve. And I had some past experience that helped with that a bit, but really it was just telling myself that we're going to find a way to make this work, right? Wow. There's not really another option. Whatever it takes, we're going to do it, right?
Yeah. I feel like so many people, though, like they say that, right? And like, because I've talked to a lot of people over the years, man. Like we, in my entrepreneurship journey, I've probably had hired and fired over 1,000 people, like for sure, And the amount of people that are like, dude, I'm going to do whatever it takes, right? And I'm going to be the hardest worker, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And man, so many people are all talk. Like it just, and it blows my mind every time, right? I'm like, they talk the big talk, and they do not walk that out at all, right? And you walked it out, so like, was that just like a daily act? Like, was it just like you waking up every morning and saying like, man, like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know I'm going to do it? Like, was that really what it boiled down to?
More or less, at first, no matter how much you prepare for day one, quote unquote, preparing is different than being in the thick of it. And I remember I woke up on January 4th, which Monday, January 4th, that was going to be the first day I was a realtor. And I woke up at home and I went up to my office and it was like, okay, now what? I've been planning for this in my head for this long. And, I had some ideas of what I needed to do, but until you're in it, you just don't know. So I remember I came in that week and we were at the old office, and it wasn't as segmented as it is now, where we have a dedicated area, right? But I remember asking, I was like, can I just sit here, And I didn't have a lot to do at that point, but I was just a sponge. And I sat there for a couple weeks just listening to people talk and asking questions and learning from people who were doing things that I wanted to do. And I wanted everybody in the office to know that I was there, I wasn't going anywhere, and if you needed anything, I could be that guy to help you out, right? And I was willing to jump on any opportunity. And a couple weeks in, we had a seller lead come through that one of our other agents had a listing appointment set up for, and they double scheduled it, whatever. I think it came through as a cash offer lead, right? And they wanted a absorbent amount of money, and it wasn't going to work for our cash offer. And they were like, Sean, do you want to go try out a listing appointment?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll go try it out. So I go down there, walk in, total hoarder house, right? She wants probably more than market value. The market was on fire at that time, but long story short, I find a way. I get this listing agreement signed, and I leave. I call my wife, and I call one of my best friends, Tyler, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing Monday, right? They're like, nothing. I'm like, great. You're gonna come down. You're gonna help clean this house for us. We're gonna get it on the market that weekend.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, they're down there that Monday. We're scrubbing floors. We're cleaning windows. And I saw that as an opportunity, right? That was something that I could springboard into more, hopefully. So I hit that pretty hard. I did, mailers and door knocking and circle dialing and huge open houses. And we ended up selling that house for, I think like 50 grand over ask. And that wasn't a testament to the cleaning that we did, but the market was just on fire. And then from there, I think I picked up a buyer. From that buyer, I got another listing. So it was just kind of that aha moment. And to use a basketball analogy, I guess, it's like you see that first shot go down, and it's like that, aha, okay, this is how we can start to snowball this into more deals.
Yeah. I was talking to Dylan about it, and I've talked to Dylan multiple times, and to your story of being there, right? Like, you were in the office, and you asked, like, and I remember, being in and it wasn't like our old office, like, had, like, the energy that we have today, right? No. I mean, it was good people, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't anywhere near, like, what we got going on right now. But you were there, right? And I think, had you not been there, like, do you think you would have gotten that deal, that first deal?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So then how much do you attribute to just showing up?
It's everything. I mean, one of the things that drew me to our team was the culture, and everybody talks culture, right? And for me, that meant I knew that there was going to be times in real estate that were going to be really hard, ups and downs, whatever, but I was just trying to ask myself in those times, what do you want, right? And for me, it was I wanted a place to go and that I felt like could be family and know that I can always come and learn and grow. And so that was just a big thing. I just knew that if I could just show up every day and put in that work, I would get somewhere, right? I mean, if you're there and you're putting in the work, you're asking the right questions, you're going to luck into some deals, I think.
1,000,000%. I could not agree more, actually. You're going to stumble over into somebody's living room and you're accidentally going to sign a contract. Like, seriously, because to a degree, I believe that success is just a math equation, right? Like 2 + 2 = 4. Like, if I'm just doing it for a long enough period of time, I'll eventually make it happen one way or the other. Like, even if I'm not the smartest guy in the room, right? So then that leads me to, like, why then do some people not show up? Like, if showing up is so simple, like a mentor told me a long time ago, he said, Austin, like, in life, what is easy to do is also easy not to do, right? And it's so simple, right? It's like you really think about it. You're like making your bed, right? It's easy to do. It's also real easy not to do, right? But it makes such a big difference. So then, you sit out there all day long and you're around a bunch of other agents and stuff. And I'd say, there's certain people that just don't show up, right? And not just in our office, but in any office and all throughout the country. What is, in your opinion, what's the difference between the person who just shows up every day and the person who doesn't show up?
It's hard when you're your own boss and you don't have anybody telling you to show up. If you're not all in on this, it's going to be really easy not to do that, and I don't have it all figured out. There's days when I really want to just stay at home and work from home, but I know I'm not as productive when I do that, and I know that I'm not going to get those opportunities if I'm at home, right? And I'm not going to overhear that conversation on the other side of the room and learn from that. And so I think that the answer is it's easy. It's easy to not do that, and a lot of people, I think, get into this industry because they like the idea of working from home if they don't want to go into the office, and you do that for a day or two and it turns into a week or two, and then your pipeline goes dry and it gets really easy to just throw in the towel.
Yeah.
But I think it's just so key, right?
Mm-hmm. I know that Dylan, for people that don't know, Dylan is the VP of sales, right? Dylan's been with me forever. And I remember many, many months where Dylan's like, dude, I'm going to give the opportunities to whoever's sitting right there. And he would just tell me that all the time. He's like, whoever's here is going to get the opportunity. It was that simple. It didn't matter. It didn't matter who was out there. It didn't matter how old or young they were. It didn't matter what nationality they were. It didn't matter what they looked like or what they smelled like or what their hair was like. Dylan would just say, very simply, whoever's sitting out there is going to get the opportunity, right? And it always stuck with me, right? Because I always give Dylan total free reign to do what he wants to do in that area, right? And man, has that worked, right? Because the people who are there are the ones that truly deserve the opportunity, right? And then guys like you, you take that opportunity and you multiply it by 100, and the next thing you know, in 1 year, you've already got a really decent sized book, going for you. So I love that. So talk to me about that first deal. Okay. You brushed over it a little bit, but I want to dive into that for somebody listening, right? Here you are, you're in the office. You said, a couple weeks you're in the office and the deal kind of comes to fruition, right? They're like, hey, Sean, you want to go on a listing appointment, okay? Were you nervous?
I wasn't, to be quite honest with you. In a past life, and we'll probably get to this in a past career, that's what I did. I used to set face-to-face appointments. And
hey, real quick, I just want you to do me a huge favor. If you're enjoying the show and you're enjoying all the amazing guests that we've been having on lately, then do me a massive favor and smash the like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe if you have not already. I would greatly appreciate it. It would mean the world to me, and we will be able to bring on a lot more big names if you help us out. Now let's get back to the show.
And go in and make a pitch. So that didn't scare me. There was a certain element that I didn't have the confidence quite yet, and you can fake it to a certain extent, but until you go through it, it's really hard to have that full confidence, I would say. So there was an element of that, right? Like, what if they ask me a question that I don't know? You're always going to have that. But the way that it was presented to me was just a low risk, go learn from it, right? So that really helped. But yeah, I was able to go in there and I think I ended up being there for a couple hours and learning more about this woman's life than I ever would have imagined. But came out with it signed and was able to make it happen.
What did you do to prepare when the opportunity fell in your lap and then I'd imagine and you feel free to share. How many days did you have to prepare from the time the opportunity fell in your lap to the time you had that set appointment? And then what did you do to prepare?
Yeah, it was a tough one. I didn't have the time that I typically do to prepare to that one because it was one that another agent just double booked on their calendar or something like that and was like, hey, I can't make this. Can you go? And that honestly probably helped me to not be nervous or to a certain extent to be underprepared because I just kind of went in with what I did know, and I probably didn't overthink it as much as I could have. But obviously I'm looking at comps in the area, and at that time the market was on fire, and it was basically take the most recent sale and add a little bit to it, and then adjust when I walk in the door and kind of see the condition. But honestly, there wasn't a whole lot that went into that. It was a track home in Chandler, 3-2, 1,500 square feet. Pretty easy to do the due diligence on and to get some numbers together. So it was fairly simple in that regard.
Most agents wouldn't call their wife and their best friend Tyler right after and say, hey, you know, on Monday or whatever, we're going to go clean this thing up and tidy it up, right? So, like, I think most people, as a matter of fact, would just either one, they would probably turn down the opportunity if it looked like that and they didn't think that it, like, the seller or whoever was capable of getting it in good condition, or they would just rely on the seller to do it, you know, even knowing, I guess, that the seller probably wouldn't be able to do it, and then the pictures would just have, like, a bunch of crap everywhere, right? Yeah. So, like, why did you make the decision to, like, do that and, like, help that seller and actually go and take your time, not only your time, but, like, to call and recruit your wife and your friend, right? And, like, take their time. Like, what drove you to do that?
First and foremost, I wanted to provide for this seller. She was moving across the country. She didn't have the means, the family, the money to prepare her home to go on the market. So I did feel a sense of responsibility to make that happen for her. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't self-serving in a way too. That was going to be the first thing with my name attached on it that went online. And I wanted to make sure that the first photos associated with Sean Bozigian online weren't a hoarder house, right? And I knew that if I did a good job with this one, I could use it to spring into some more deals. So I took that to heart, and I wanted to make sure that our marketing material was on point and that whatever product I did put out there, I could use moving forward.
Which I love, you know, because it really is perfect. You know, I believe you were sitting in the meeting yesterday when Brandon he did the win-win analogy, right? And that really is what I just thought of when you were talking, right? Obviously, you know, first and foremost, you wanted the seller to win, right? And you knew she was moving across the country, and you had to serve her the best way you could, which was, hey, I got to help her get this thing cleaned up. It ain't going to show good right now, right? Mm-hmm. But then secondary to that, you had to win, right? Which I think is what every transaction and business relationship, every relationship should be a win-win. You know, like you shouldn't have a win-lose relationship, and you definitely shouldn't have a lose-lose relationship, right?
Right.
So I love that. And so here you are, you get the deal. Then what? Because your first deal, right? So, like, how did you even know, like, because you did the documentation in person, did you not?
I did, yeah, and I knew enough to be proficient in that, enough to at least get it signed, right? And then from there, rely on our team. One of the best things about having a team and having transaction coordinators and a marketing team and all the things that we have here is the support. And so as soon as I got that, it's like, okay, now what, right?
Yeah.
And so thankfully I was able to fall back on that and get those next steps lined up. And it was a pretty quick turnaround, so we needed to get everything in motion, you know, getting photos, getting lockbox, getting signed, getting on the market. So I learned a lot really quickly, but with the support of our team, which was huge in that situation.
Awesome. I want to talk about that in a little while. I want to talk about the importance of a team, what to look for when joining a team, what you were looking for when you were looking to join your first team, and all the attributes that make a great team a great team. But before we do, I want to go back and talk a little bit about what led up to the real estate thing, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you correct me if I'm wrong, you moved, you're not from Arizona, right? You moved from Arizona. Talk to me about where you're from and why the heck you ended up in Arizona.
Yeah. I'll try to keep it fairly brief, but I grew up in Southern California. I actually come from two previous generations of realtors, and I say that with a smile on my face a little bit. I think my dad had a short run in real estate in the late 80s during a really bad market, and when I closed my first deal, he joked and said, I think you made more money in real estate than I have. But he went on to have a great career doing some other things. But my grandpa and my great uncle owned and operated a really successful Cold Wall Banker franchise in my hometown. And quite honestly, I never saw myself going that route. I went to school in Flagstaff at NAU, and I was a decent student, but got to that point in college where I was like, all right, you got to figure something out, right? And at that point, what I had known was business school, and I grew up playing sports and baseball in particular my whole life through college. And so I was like, okay, you're going to have this degree, now what? And we'd have career fairs at NAU, and I remember going to some of those. The big corporations from the Valley would go up, and I knew very quickly that I just did not see myself going that route. Yeah. So it was like, okay, we got this baseball thing and this business thing. How can we make that work? And so through some prior connections, I was able to get an internship up in Spokane, Washington, with a minor league baseball team called the Spokane Indians. I went up there for a summer. I really enjoyed it. Got offered a full-time job in entry-level ticket sales out of college, and I moved up there. Thought I'd be up there for a couple years, having fun, working in sports as I kind of figured out the next step. I ended up falling in love with the industry, the people I was working with. It was a great organization, and they took me under their wing a little bit and mentored me and were more or less grooming me to be in a management position within the organization or an ownership group at some point. I was assistant general manager towards the end of my time there, and then COVID came around, and I had a lot of time all of a sudden on my hands. And at that point, my wife Lauren was in Spokane with me, and her family's still down here in Arizona. Mine's in California, and as we looked at getting married, we were engaged at that point, starting a family. It became apparent that we wanted to be closer to family, and real estate had entered the picture, which I'm sure we'll get to more on the investment side.
Sure.
But it had become a passion. And so I went to a realtor that I knew in the area, still know. He's a mentor of mine. His name is Jonas Elber. He's an absolute rock star up in Spokane. And I said, Jonas, I'm moving to Spokane or to Phoenix next year. I have a little bit of time on my hands. I have a little bit of capital. What can we do here? Like teach me something. And he was like, I do have a couple flips going on. You can walk those with me. You can hang out with me, but have you ever thought of getting your license? He was like, number one, I think you'd be really good at it. I think you have the personality for it. But number two, if you truly want to go this investing route, I think it's a great way to go. You can be in the room with the right people. You can learn the ins and outs of the business and really set yourself up. And he was like, if you commit to that, then you can come work alongside me. You can shadow me. You can ask any question you want.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, sign me up. So I ended up getting my license, my Arizona real estate license, about a year and a half before I moved down here while still up in Washington.
I love that, man. And I love that. So I wonder, isn't Braylon Spokane?
He's close. He's Tri-Cities, yeah.
Tri-Cities,
yeah.
okay,
so
yeah.
There's a little crossover
I
there.
have family in, man, I forget the name of it, but they're not that far up. They're in like the Seattle area.
Okay, yeah.
But anyways, so no, that's really cool. So at what point then did you when did you get into the investment opportunity? Was it after that mentor kind of like you were underneath his wing and then you stumbled across a couple of rentals, or when did that come about?
No, it was actually earlier on. And I don't want to dive into a story, but I think it's a good one. So I'll try to keep it short, but real estate, like the light bulb moment, I guess, so to speak. I went on a family trip with my parents, actually. This was probably like 2016, I want to say. And I knew what Airbnb was, but this was the first time we were staying at an Airbnb. Yeah. And it was at a resort area in California. And we get down there, and I've always been pretty analytical. And I remember sitting in this, it was a little condo. And I remember sitting there and like looking on Zillow what this woman paid for this home. And I was like, wait, what are we renting this for tonight, right? And then just like the math starts going. Yeah. And it was just like a light bulb moment. I remember I was flying back to Spokane after that and downloaded all these audio books, and I think I plowed through like Rich Dad Poor Dad and Richest Man in Babylon and like all like the paradigm shifting books. And from that point, I was just kind of like hooked on real estate. So my wife Lauren was planning on moving up to Spokane shortly thereafter. And I remember one night I called her and I was like, hey babe, remember how we were talking about renting a place? I was in an apartment at the time. She's like, yeah. I'm like, we're gonna buy a place. Yeah. And I'm like, but don't worry, it's going to be okay, but it's also going to be a duplex, all right? And she, to her credit, was like on board from day one. So we ended up purchasing a duplex. It was built in 1904, like total project. We lived in one half, rented the other, switched, rented the other, renovated the other. And, it was a process, but it was the best hands-on learning experience I could have. And thankfully it worked out okay, with some small struggles in there, but that was, just kind of that moment where real estate started to make a lot of sense. And from there, I knew that it was always going to be a part of my life in one way or another. What
market was that in?
That was in Spokane.
Okay, very cool.
So
we still own that one.
Yeah, we still own that one. We have management in place now, and it turned out to be a home run of a deal. We didn't know it at the time necessarily, but yeah, it's a great property and does really well, and very fond memories of what went into it.
Yeah, for sure. That they call that like house hacking, right?
Yeah,
like where you
absolutely.
live in a unit and you rent out the other unit.
Yep.
What would your advice be to somebody who's maybe looking to find a house hack? Somewhere in the nation, like they want, because house hacking, I mean, you could do it with a single family too and rent out the other rooms, but I guess I mean it in the sense of like how you did it, right? So you could do like I think a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex. You can do FHA, I think.
You can. Yeah, so you can go very low down. You can, owner occupy for as little as a year and then do it again if you want. I mean, it is the easiest way to set yourself up for success in real estate. And there's other areas of the country, Washington being one of them, where it was great for house hacking because there were awesome duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes in areas of the city and in areas of different cities around the state where you would want to live, right?
Wow.
And it's a little different in Arizona. You have to be a little bit more creative, and I've helped some clients with it. A lot of times the small multis in Arizona and the Phoenix area aren't in
the best
areas.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get a little creative though. You can do like a single family with an ADU or a casita or mother-in-law suite. That's a popular one down here. Yep. Or you can rent by the room. And it really comes down to what level of privacy do you want. On one end, you have the house single family with an ADU. Then in the middle, you probably have the duplex where you're sharing walls. And then on the far end, you have the single family home where you're renting by the room. But as a whole, I truly believe in that strategy. I think it's a great way to get your feet wet. And you need a place to live, right? Why not turn it into something that's going to generate you some income as well?
I completely agree. Who do you think that is for? Like, what type of avatar of human being would that be a great option for? Is it for somebody younger? Maybe they don't quite have a family yet. Like, who do you believe that if they're watching right now, it's like, hey, man, like you should really look into this?
Yeah, I think it appeals most to that first-time home buyer. But with that being said, affordability is an issue right now across the country when we're talking housing, especially in this market and some other ones. So if it's somebody who's maybe renting right now and I can buy something similar that has a mother-in-law suite or an ADU, and I can still have a similar level of privacy, but have these people in the back pay for half of my mortgage, that appeals to a lot of people, right? So then you're opening the doors to even more buyers out there. So I think traditionally it's probably that first-time home buyer, but you can get creative with it, and it can work for a lot of different sub-segments.
Yeah, I think it's a great first investment. That's why I ask, and I want to share that knowledge with people because the only reason like I never did it is because in Arizona, to your point, it was always difficult, right? And I never really, I guess I just got to a point very quickly where I was like, okay, I just want to live by myself, But like, man, like especially I think in the other markets, around the nation, because like to your point, like, dude, there's some of these other markets where like there's a really nice, like they have really nice like duplexes and triplexes. Like, you drive by them and you're like, dude, this is in a great area of town. Yeah. And they look just as good as a single family.
Yeah, and you wouldn't know a lot of them walking in, you would think you're in a single family home, So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So what did you like about the baseball thing? Like, and then, when COVID happened, like, did you know that and was it that COVID happened and that you then knew you had to come back down and live with the family or be either near Lauren's family or your family, somebody's family, right? Or kind of a mixture of the two? Obviously it didn't sound like the baseball thing was even an option after that, right?
It would have been. Had the real estate thing not come into the picture, I probably would be working in sports down here. I mean, I loved it. When you're working in minor league sports in particular, it's really a small business. We always used to say you're controlling everything except what happens on the field, which sounds really counterintuitive. But if you think about it, like you're walking into a Suns game, right? And it's the music that's playing and the concessions and the sponsorship sales all across the court and the ticket sales and the overall atmosphere. That's what we were creating. Yeah. So you got to wear a lot of different hats working in really what it was a small business. You're working in a small business, and it just so happens to be at a baseball stadium. So what went into that switch, I would say, is one, I wanted to be closer to family. Two, the real estate thing had happened. Three, I think I'd been so goal oriented on chasing this dream of sports that once COVID happened, it was the first time that I'd really like come up for air in a few years to reevaluate. And as much as I loved working in sports, you do sacrifice a little bit on not only time, it's really long hours, but unless you're in an ownership position or in an equity position or you're very high up, the money's not great in sports. You do it because you love working with like-minded people, and there's a lot of benefits that come with that. But we kind of saw it as if there's a window before we start having kids and growing the family to try something new and to go after more. And more doesn't just mean money; it's a number of different things. But we saw that as that window for us,
which is awesome. Yeah, and I think obviously looking back, you have to recognize you probably made the right decision, whether that was an easy one or not, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, not only did you do very well in year one, but from the outside looking in, you're very good at it. If you've ever wanted to get into wholesaling real estate and you want to learn how to flip contracts and wholesale, right? Maybe you're brand new, maybe you've never wholesaled a deal, or maybe you're even doing a couple of deals a month right now, but you want to learn how to do more. Instead of joining my coaching program or somebody else's coaching program, we're actually looking to hire. So go ahead and message me 480-418-5339 and send me a text message opportunity, okay? So if you want to work with me, you want to work with my incredible team, you want all of our leads, you want all of our systems, all of our processes, everything, right? And I've done about 2,000 wholesale deals in my career, then go ahead, shoot me a text, 480-418-5339, and message me opportunity. And look, especially if you're in my state, okay, the state of Arizona. If you live in Arizona and you want to get into wholesaling, this especially is an opportunity for you because you can come sit right in this office with my entire team and be a part of one of the biggest wholesaling companies in the country. I look forward to talking to you. You know, you're good at real estate, right? You're good with people. You're good on the phone. You're incredibly naturally talented, which I don't think everybody has that. I think everybody can get good at that, but I do think there are certain people that are better at it out of the gate. You know, yeah. And I guess that kind of leads me to my next question. Like, what made you, was it the way that you grew up? Like, because even day one, when I had initially talked to you, like I did recognize, I always know when I talk to people, like, okay, they're, like I interviewed a guy just a little while ago, and I told Thomas, I said, hey, he may or may not be a good fit, right? With you and with other people, there are certain people where I sit down, I'm pretty confident. I'm like, hey, I think they'll be really good. Like, I think they're just good with people. They're humble. Where do you think that came from? Was it the way that you were raised? Was it your life experience? I mean, like, what enabled you to get good at talking to people and being able to mirror and match and just, be a chameleon and all the things that you're good at?
Yeah, I am blessed to have grown up with a lot of really great role models in my life, probably more than others. I'm extremely grateful to be able to say that. My dad would always tell me, he would say, there's a lot of things in life that you can't control, right? And this probably came from a sports analogy that's typically how my life lessons from my dad started. But there's a lot of things that you can't control in life, but what you can always control is your work ethic. And I think it translates so well to business and real estate. I mean, there's always going to be times that a buyer's going to walk away, or a seller's going to go with somebody else, or a roof's going to need replacing and it's going to kill a deal. But what you can always control is your work ethic, the way you respond to that, the way you treat people. And so I've always held that close to my chest. And that's something that I think I view as kind of my superpower, right? It's there's always going to be people that are smarter than me or better at talking to people than me or better at sales than me, but it's going to be really hard to find somebody who's going to outwork me day in and day out.
Yeah. Talk to me about what you were doing in the beginning. Aside from you showing up every day, what were you actually doing every day? What were the actions that you were taking every day?
Yeah, well, the easiest thing beginning was we have this huge database of sellers, as you know, that over the last handful of years have in one form or another raised their hand and said, I want to sell. And that could mean they want to sell in 10 years or they want to sell tomorrow, but we have thousands and thousands and thousands of these leads. So I've always viewed that as this well, right? That you can always come back to and you can always have conversations with real sellers who have some interest in selling. So I was doing a lot of open houses, trying to get out in the community as much as I can, shadow other agents. But when I wasn't doing that, it was making these calls and fine-tuning my responses to questions and my value proposition and everything that goes into doing this job day in and day out. Even if I wasn't necessarily, I was lucky enough to get some deals from that, but even if I wasn't doing that, just the amount of conversations that I had with people about real estate, and questions that I got asked that I didn't know the answer to at first, but within a few weeks or a few months, I was able to confidently answer those. I think that was huge. So I've always, it was a number of things in the beginning, but really always mixing in those calls and trying to stay consistent with that.
So cold calling, open houses, networking, right? I believe you did a lot with Bigger Pockets, and I believe you were involved with them, and you would post in there and actively engage in that community.
Yeah, I do. Bigger Pockets was one that, talking about when I first got into real estate, that was probably the easiest one for me to just get hooked up on, and I spent a lot of time creeping the forums and listening to podcasts and everything. And I've made it a point now to try to contribute more. And so I meet a lot of buyers, through Bigger Pockets, people that are looking to invest in Phoenix or looking for house hacks. That's a popular one on Bigger Pockets, or out-of-state investors. I've been able to connect. And again, it's one of those things where even if you're not necessarily getting business from it, you're getting your name out there, and that stuff that's going to live on forever. Anytime anybody searches for that topic on Bigger Pockets, my post from however many years ago is going to come up. So I try to be active on there.
Have you sold, you might not know the answer to this, of the deals that you did in 2022, how many of them came from doing an open house? Or roughly, even if you don't know.
Only one for me for open houses. Yeah, I haven't. That was one avenue that I can definitely improve on. Only one deal from open houses.
Well, a deal's a deal, right?
Yeah.
And you did a lot of deals last year, and I know you were busy, so you probably started out, I don't even know how many open houses you did, but what do you think about open houses in the future then?
I like them. I mean, I always say it's the only place that you're going to go where a lead's going to walk right into you, right? And I know you say that as well, but it's so true. And I think I just told somebody that the other day. A lot of times my friends that aren't in real estate don't necessarily understand like an open house. Like, are these your listings that you're sitting open? Like, what are you doing with all these open houses? And so I've explained it like that a couple times, where it's just like, no, it's somebody else's listing. I'm just going there and I'm doing the same thing I would do from the office, but I'm doing it at this really cool home. Yep. And every 10 or 15 minutes, somebody who's looking to buy a home is going to walk in and talk to me. You know? And when you break it down like that, it's like, why wouldn't I do that?
Yep.
Why wouldn't I do that every single day that I'm not, actively working with buyers or sellers? So I do believe in open houses.
Yeah. When I was in production, I did a lot with open houses, and I probably did, I don't know, maybe 30 million or so over the course of, let's just call it like 4 or 5 years, probably actually actively doing them, which is, I mean, $1 million in commissions, just sitting open houses, right? I mean, so, and it wasn't like, I for a couple of years I did a lot of them, and then I didn't do them as much, but I mean, still had I done nothing else and I didn't spend any, I would be a millionaire.
Yeah.
Right, from doing open houses, which is wild, So I think people, if they don't have anything else to do, they should do that, right? So talk to me about when you're calling these people, cold calling, right? You talk about the pond or the well, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's really uncomfortable, right? I see it all the time. I see it a little bit in our organization, not as much, because I think they group together and they try to tackle it head on. But in a lot of other organizations and just in life in general, people hate the idea of picking up a phone and calling somebody. Like, we live in a world right now where, like, I feel like if somebody could break up with somebody over a text, like, they would, right? Like, if you could get a divorce via an email, you would do it, right? Like not you, but the world, because we live in a world where people don't want to talk to people, which is wild and astounding to me. And so here you are new, and you're like, dude, I'm just going to pick up the phone. And you said it a little while ago. You're like, I learned from doing that. You're like, half the time I didn't know the answer, right? Well, that scares the hell out of some people. So what did you do in that moment? Like, here you are, like, in that moment, like, how did you have the courage to do that?
I think you have to know when you're making calls that chances are you're never going to meet this person. They don't know who you are. They don't know who your family is. They might hang up on you, and it's really easy to take that personally, but they don't know anything about you, and you have to just in a way separate yourself from that and not take it personally. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle to get over, is just that fear of rejection. And it sucks, and there's no way around it, but the more that you can make sense of it is really helpful. And then again, I just looked at it like a learning experience, that I'm going to make these calls and hopefully I get business out of it. And if I don't, I'm going to do all these other avenues. But so I think taking the pressure off myself a little bit and then just removing the personal side of it is huge when you're making those calls. And then on the actual nuts and bolts of the call, again, these are people that at one point have said, I want to sell my home. So I always looked at them as semi-warm leads.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe it was a little while ago that they talked to somebody, but they talked to somebody. They have a house, they own a house, and they, in some respect, were considering selling. So a lot of it's psychological. And of course, I don't have it figured out. There's days when I hate picking up the phone, of course, but those would be my tips and some of the things that I always try to remind myself.
Yeah. I always told it, like, if somebody has a heartbeat and they own a home, they're thinking about selling.
Right.
Because on average in America, they sell every 5 to 7 years, right? So even if they just bought it a day ago, well, then that just means they're thinking about selling in 6 years from now, right? Like, eventually they're going to sell the dang thing.
Right.
So I just got to start talking to them, So when they're ready to sell, I'm the guy they call, right? Or ideally, I'm already in front of them the day they think about selling, and we're already having a conversation because we just have a good relationship, right?
Yeah.
I think it's simple, but again, it goes back to what's easy to do is easy not to do, right? And therefore people don't do it, What did you do when it came to like time management? I feel like a lot of people struggle with time management. And I feel like you're somebody who got pretty good at time management, not even just in real estate, but I think you're pretty balanced. It seems like, from afar, you're obviously a better golfer than I am. You're married, right? You obviously, rookie of the year, you did $7.5 million your first year. Like, how do you manage your time?
Real estate there's no work-life balance in real estate. I think that's a myth. And a lot of people want to get into real estate for this idea of work-life balance and being your own boss. And you're not. Your boss is your clients. And when they need you, that's when you're working, right? So it's more work-life integration.
Yeah. That's
the way that I look at it is, while I might be on call at 8 p.m. one day when I'm watching a movie with my wife, that's kind of the way it is. We just went to Maui recently, and on the flight there, I got a deal coincidentally, and on the flight back, I got a deal like 30,000 feet up,
Wow.
And I was like, how cool is this?
Yeah.
And in one regard, it's like, man, I have to work on this vacation, whatever. But it's like, what other industry are you going to be able to do that and be able to work around your vacations and stuff? So it's easy to let that abuse that freedom a little bit. So you have to know your boundaries. But I think that's the biggest thing for me is just understanding that I am going to be on call at times when it's not the most convenient, but I also have a lot more freedom than I ever had in my life to do those fun things with my wife and my family and spend more time with her on days that I would typically be at an office in front of a computer. So, that overall, that's the way I look at it. Mm-hmm. When it comes down to, if we really want to talk about the way I structure my day, I typically, morning time, I'm doing some kind of prospecting, calls or some kind of outbound reach. Afternoons, I typically block off for appointments, whether that's with buyer showings, listing appointments. And then in the evenings, I'm usually responding to people from the morning that I reached out to, or, going over, doing follow-ups from those appointments that I had in the afternoon. So it's really easy to get off track from that schedule. But if I had it my way, that's probably how I'd position each day. Almost
like you're on the offense in the morning and the defense towards the evening.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, that's a great way to look at it.
I like that a lot. I try to do that too. I feel like if I can be a lot of times I'm on the defense all the time now because it's just my role's kind of turned into that, I'm a firefighter, but when in the beginning, I'm still on the offense a decent amount, right? But I love being on the offense, man, because like you're in control, right? Like you control the narrative. Like when you're banging the calls, like you're it's just like you could do that as long as you want, right? And when you're on the defense, you're like you said, you're doing things that maybe you're a little bit more reactive, I think, and less proactive.
Yeah, totally. And if you're doing the hard things first in the morning, the outbound stuff, it's going to be way easier to put it off, or way harder to put it off into the afternoon if you're just knocking those out, right? Because it's so easy if you're out doing showings, whatever, to make excuses to not do the hard stuff because I got to follow up with this buyer and then I got to prep for this listing appointment. So I think tackling the things that you don't look forward to early on is really key.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. I'm the kind of guy where like I can only work out in the morning, like, and the reason being is because like if I do it at night, like I'll put it off. For me, and everybody's different, but it's the same in work, right? Where like I want to do the hardest thing in the beginning, like I'll do the cold plunge sometimes and I got to do it in the morning. I can't like, it's actually way easier for me to do that at night. And which is the reason why I have to do it in the morning, right?
Yeah, I get it.
Because it's so freaking hard in the morning, like, and so if I do it in the morning, then I can do anything for the rest of the day. Like everything else is easy, right? Like, and there's a lot that happens in the world that we live in, right? And you want to set your day up for success, 1,000,000%. So talk to me about joining a team. Here you are, you're a new agent. There's a lot of people watching probably that are brand new. They're thinking about becoming an agent. Maybe they just became an agent, and they don't know what the heck to do. Like they're like deer in the headlights, right? They're like, man, I don't know. They got to figure out what brokerage you're going to join. They got to figure out if they're going to be a solo agent. They got to figure out if they're going to be on a team. They got to figure out, and then once they figure all that out, then they got to figure out what team and what do I even look for in a team, and like what do I want that team to have, and what don't I want, right? Like, and there's so much to that. And I would like to believe that you made a good decision. So how did you come to that decision?
Yeah. So the way that I came to the decision of joining the Zaback group, I found that to be one of the hardest things about getting started in real estate. Is just the overwhelming amount of teams out there. I know Keith Anderson was on the show recently, and you guys were trying to figure out how many teams there are in Arizona. And it's like, I don't know.
Nobody knows.
And
there's not a metric for it.
Right.
He's creating a software right now, by the way, where he's developing a way to eventually track how many team leaders there are, and then the average team members' yearly income, which will be a really cool metric to figure out because nobody knows that.
I remember I searched for that. That was one of the things I was looking for, because when you're coming out of real estate school and you're starting to meet with all these people, it's really hard to see through the facade. And real estate's so interesting in that it's probably the only time when you're going to have these people approaching you, right? And it's nothing special about me or anybody else, but it's a numbers game for a lot of these brokerages. So they're all going to make you a really compelling pitch. So I don't have a perfect answer as to how to find the right team. For me, I got lucky enough. We had bought a investment property down in Arizona with an agent that I met through Bigger Pockets, George Mebawala, who we're still friends with.
He texted me a little while ago.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So George is awesome, and I was really struggling to find a team. And I tend to overthink these things a little bit. And being up in Washington at the time, it was just really hard, and I was struggling with that. And George was on your podcast, and I remember I hit him up after, and I was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a team. Like, tell me more about this Austin Zaback guy." And he's said a bunch of good things about you, and then I set up a meeting with you. We come down, we meet. I would like to say that the rest is history, but I still, met with some other teams, and I remember I put together this whiteboard with Lauren at the time, and I was like, "Babe, help me decide which team." And we're going through like the pros and cons of each, and there weren't any cons with the Zaback group. And she's like,
"Oh, come on, there had to have been a con."
The only con was, I think I remember putting it. I can probably show you this after. I don't think I've ever told you, but it was like too good to be true, something like that, right? And so I was like, I don't know, it's just like something. He's such a nice guy. Like, this seems really cool. And Lauren's like, "You're being an idiot. Like, this is obvious." So, very quickly I found out that I made the right decision, got to know you, and saw that it's how genuine you are. And so that was my story. But for anybody who's looking to join a team, I think you have to ask yourself. We just hosted something for new agents who were just, I think, getting their license, and we're going through this 20-page thing. And everybody's sitting back, watching, and then the slide that comes up is about splits and commission. And everybody gets out their notepad and their pen, and it's funny because that's what a lot of people do, but it should be one of the last things that you even care about, I think, when you're joining a team. I think what you need to look at is what's on a day when you're really struggling, when things are going south, and when real estate gets really hard and you haven't had a deal in months. What do you want? Right? And for me, I knew that it was the atmosphere, and I needed a place that I could come to and find support and find like-minded individuals, and there was music playing. So I found that with this group, but I think a lot of agents, they go for the splits and they go for a number of different things. But I think you really need to dig deep and figure out, what kind of personalities are you going to click with.
Yeah.
So
I love that so much. Brian North called me yesterday, and he calls me out of the blue, right? I think Brian North, North & Co. And we're pretty good buddies now. We've done quite a few deals. And so he calls me yesterday, and he goes, "Hey, Austin." And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on? Thanks for taking my call." "Yeah, of course, bro. I'll always take your call, And he goes, "Hey, I just talked to this guy. I just sat down, and he's like, and he told me where basically the guy's, I'll tell you after the show, but he's a big TV guy, right?"
Yeah.
He's like, he's getting his real estate license and he's looking to join a team. He's like, and I don't want him. He goes, he's like, it's not that I don't want him. He's like, but I just don't do new agents. He's like, this guy's got it all. I mean, he's the major star of a show, or he won a show or whatever. But he's like, I just don't do new agents, So, he goes, I told him about you. Like, I think he'd be a good fit for you, right? He goes, but I told him, he said, I told him to go talk to a couple other people, but he should probably join your team. He said, but the advice I gave him was, don't ever sit down with a team leader and ask what the splits are. He said, instead, ask what the value is in exchange for the split that they have. He said, ask it like that with everybody that you sit down with. And I'd never heard it put that way, honestly. Like, until Brian called me, I've always had that that notion in my mind of like, man, I hate when people ask me that, right? Because they totally overlook everything else, like as if none of that even matters, and it's like it's so freaking valuable, And that really resonates with me what you said, right? Which is like, hey, dude, like yes, it's important, right? And yes, it matters. And yes, you want to make sure you're going to freaking make money, obviously, right? And everybody should be looking out for their family and their loved ones and making sure they can put food on the table and live a good life, like 1,000,000%, right? But there are other things that are equally as important to that, because I've seen a lot of people make a little bit more money and be miserable doing it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. When I decided I was going to do this full time, I remember sitting down with my family, and we do like goal setting every December as a family, and it's something we've done forever, right? And when going into this past year, my goal was not like, volume or number of transactions or anything like that. It was like, I want to get through this first year and be able to confidently say, come next December, if I like this, right? Because we were going through so many life changes moving down here, and I can make all the money in the world, but if I wasn't happy, why are you doing it? So, obviously as the year goes on, you start to project out more and figure out numbers and stuff. But that was key, was just like, dude, do I even like this? So I think before you think about splits, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're splitting hairs. Most of the teams around are going to be really close. So I totally agree. It should be, you got to dig deep and figure out what's going to make you happy and try to align yourself with those people.
Yeah. Dude, I totally agree. How important would you say, the culture and the atmosphere, and because everybody's like, if their first question isn't the split, it's like, what do you do for lead generation? Do you have a transaction coordinator? Do you have air conditioning? Do you use a swamp cooler?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, is there a desk I can sit at? Am I going to be the only guy there if I show up? Right. Yeah. But when we talk about like culture and atmosphere, like where does that rank? If I were to say, hey, rank that on a scale of 1 to 10, where does that come in at?
Everybody's going to be a little different. For me, it's towards the top. I've always been a big believer, and I came from an organization that's what I love most about it. So naturally, I was like, I know I would find comfort in finding something similar. But for somebody that really enjoys working from home and banging out calls in their own environment with Netflix going on or whatever the case may be, it might be lower down. So that's why I think, I would tell anybody who's looking to join our team or any team, like, we might not be the best fit for you, or that team might not be the best fit for you, or it might be the perfect fit for somebody else. So I think that's the great thing about teams, that there are so many different options, and you can really have it your way. So I believe in that.
I love that. Yeah, I truly do. I truly love that, and I think that people need to like go back and re-listen a couple times. You know, it's like, dude, like, I don't know why people overcomplicate it. You know, sit down. I think you did it really well too. Like sitting down, doing the whiteboard. You know, and really drawing it out. Like what am I looking for? And then you actually like put them all side by side, right? Like what does each one have? And you really visualized it. You know, when did you and your family start doing the dream building in the month of December?
Oh man, it's probably been 5 or 6 years now. Yeah, and I think it started out, you know, my mom, my dad, my sister, and myself, and then, you know, we brought in the spouses at some point. My sister's getting married in September, and her fiance joined, and Lauren joined on my side. So it's fun. During COVID, it was tough. We weren't always together, but we always try to make it a point and get everybody involved, and just holds people accountable.
Yeah. Who started that? Whose idea?
Gosh, I want to say it was my sister.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll need to fact check that, but I think it was my sister.
It sounds like everybody in that room or in your family is supportive of each other's goals. Where do you think that comes from? Because you see a lot of families and friendships and relationships where, like, if I were to sit down in a living room, right, and I've been there. You know, I've been there where I've sat down. I remember when I was a little kid. I wasn't little. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I think I was a teenager. And I remember sitting in the living room in Washington, actually, and my uncle was there. My uncle's got a bunch of money, but he's super conservative and just a freaking, you know, and he's a good guy, but he's just one of those guys, right? And I was telling him, I said, man, I just want to make, I can't remember what I said. I said, I want to make 20 grand a month or something. Like that was my goal. It was my goal in like 5 years. Like it was like some far out goal, right? Yeah. He's like, don't ever set that big of goals, you know, like you're going to fall short and you're going to blah, blah, blah. He's like, you know, and he totally shot it down, right?
Yeah.
And man, dude, I wore that on my freaking shoulder for so long, you know, and it got to a point where he came to my office, you know, 5 or 6 years later, and he goes, gosh dang, you know, like, and so like a lot of people, the reason I bring that up is a lot of people aren't that supportive, right? Like, has your family always been very supportive of your goals and ambitions?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I said earlier on the show just how grateful I am for the people that I grew up around, but yeah, no hesitation. You know, whether my sister or myself wanted to pursue really anything that we were passionate about, I think that's the reason that, you know, I grew up or ended up working in sports. My sister ended up working in fashion, you know, is because we didn't have, our parents weren't the ones to tell us, like, you can't do that, go be an engineer or go into marketing or, you know, whatever the case may be. They were always extremely supportive of what we wanted to do and supported our passions. And, you know, and for that reason, I think my sister and myself worked so hard to validate that approval, I guess you could say, in a way. So, yeah, it's been great to be able to do that as a family. It's something that I always look forward to. And I know, you know, it's not just the kids, my sister and myself, but my parents enjoy it too. So it's always been a fun one. And then being able to check in halfway through the year, quarterly, and see how everybody's doing, it's really awesome.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I think it gives people a good perspective of how to potentially get ideas to raise a family one day, right? You can learn from it, and I know I learned from stuff like that, which is why I'm so curious, right? Like, how do I want to raise kids one day? And I think they did it the right way, obviously. So, what was one of the hardest things, or what was one of the hardest things that you had to overcome in 2022?
I'll back up a little bit to 2021 probably, and one of the hardest things getting into real estate was leaving behind something that I really liked. I think a lot of times when you're switching careers or you're making a move, it's because you're unhappy or you're in a place of need where something, you know, needs to happen. And it was really hard for me to get past the point of, like, I'm leaving this thing that I really love to go work in real estate, which is totally unknown, right? And I was always confident that I would do well, but there was obviously no guarantees. And so just getting to a point of comfortability with making that move and starting in real estate was probably half the battle. Once I was in it, I feel like those struggles were a little smaller on the grand scheme of things. But with that being said, throughout the year, you learn to have thick skin. I mean, I've had people that I've worked my tail off for go a different direction over $500. I've had, found out through lenders that buyers bought with a different agent. You find out those, if you're talking to enough buyers and enough sellers, you're naturally going to run into some of those situations, right? And it's easy to beat yourself up over it, but it's also easy to learn from it and to be better for it. So I truly believe in just trying to learn from those situations. So, I have learned to that people aren't always as loyal when you bring money into the question, into the equation. That's one of the hard truths of doing this. Yep. And as hard as you work and as loyal as you are, it's not always reciprocated. And so I think you toughen up pretty quick doing this, and you learn that. But hopefully you get better for it.
Yeah, I love that answer. Phenomenal answer. In that moment when people do that, and a deal falls apart or what have you, just in general, like how do you rebound quickly?
It's hard to rebound quickly. And quickly is relative, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
What I've found to be the best equation is to not act so quickly. It's easy to pick up the phone and try
what the heck?
Yeah, exactly. And that's not going to help you or anyone else, right? So I think it's allow yourself to be upset, be down in the dumps for a couple hours or an afternoon or an evening, whatever you need. But then you just got to move on. Nothing good is going to come of dwelling in that. You got to have the abundance mindset that, you leave that one behind and two new ones are going to show up. So I think that's key. And then trying to learn from it. I've had times where I've messaged those clients and, hey, I'm always trying to improve. Is there anything else I could have done to help secure your business? And a lot of times that answer is either going to help you out or it's going to validate that, hey, they truly just wanted to save $500 and, you might have done the best job in the world, but money's money.
Sure.
So those would be some of the things that I would say help.
Yeah, no, extremely valuable. Are you thinking about getting more rental properties in the future?
I am, yeah. We've always had the goal of using what I'm doing today. I'm really focused right now on mastering this craft.
Yeah, sure.
But we've always had the goal of using that to bring in rental properties into the mix, right? And
if you've ever wanted to get into wholesaling real estate and you want to learn how to flip contracts and wholesale, right? Maybe you're brand new, maybe you've never wholesaled a deal, or maybe you're even doing a couple of deals a month right now, but you want to learn how to do more. Instead of joining my coaching program or somebody else's coaching program, we're actually looking to hire. So go ahead and message me 480-418-5339 and send me a text message opportunity, okay? So if you want to work with me, you want to work with my incredible team, you want all of our leads, you want all of our systems, all of our processes, everything, right? And I've done about 2,000 wholesale deals in my career, then go ahead, shoot me a text, 480-418-5339, and message me opportunity. And look, especially if you're in my state, okay, the state of Arizona. If you live in Arizona and you want to get into wholesaling, this especially is an opportunity for you because you can come sit right in this office with my entire team and be a part of one of the biggest wholesaling companies in the country. I look forward to talking to you.
And I think, if you were to ask me what the ultimate goal is, it's, supplement this income enough to be financially free via the rental property. So that's always kind of been the star up here, and everything we're doing right now is just helping us get to that point. So always looking for new opportunities and new ways to grow that. We have the duplex up in Washington. We have a condo that we bought through George in Old Town. We have a house right now that'll be a rental when we make our next move, and then we have kind of a family one that we manage in South Scottsdale as well. So slowly adding to that portfolio, but definitely something that we're going to do a lot more of in the future.
Yeah. Do you like Airbnb or long-term more, or does it just depend?
I'm a believer in long-term. I know the Airbnb works for some people, and I know it's really hot for a while, and we've already seen, just how rocky it can be, and long-term buy and hold is just so tried and true that it's hard to go wrong in my mind. I also think I'd lose too much sleep having a big portfolio of Airbnbs. So, maybe it's something that I'm going to try along the path. And, there's a number of different things, right? It's like I have long-term income up here and you might do a couple fix and flips, or you might wholesale some deals, and you might do some short terms. And all of those, I think, are just building capital to acquire more long-term buy and holds.
That's all it is. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm the same way, dude. I think that, we're obviously, my entire goal is just to own property. Obviously I've got a million goals, but like my personal goal just for like me and my family is like, why not just own a bunch of property, right? Because you can always fall back on that, right? Like you have a bad year, you get sick, something happens, anybody, I think every agent out there and every agent watching and every agent in our organization and everybody's organization, should go figure out the game of owning property, right? And whatever you got to do. And even if it takes you 5 years to get you got to start to learn it and figure out and game plan it, right? Like, how am I going to buy property? What would that look like? Because, even if you acquire a property every 3 or 4 years, if you do that for 20 or 30 years, you're going to end up in a really good place.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's one of the coolest things about working with like-minded people like yourself in our group is that, man, we're surrounded by so many people who are doing some awesome stuff. We just had a big name in here yesterday talking creative finance, which I think is just going to become more and more prevalent in the near future. And so there's just so many cutting edge things, and real estate's always evolving, but you surround yourself with the right people, and there's always going to be those opportunities to scale.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, Brandon is a really good dude. I've known him for a long time, and I told him, I texted him, I said, hey, get Sean Terry on the pod, So, and I know Sean Terry pretty well, so we'll get him on. But yeah, creative finance is really cool, and I like the way that he talked about doing a wrap and all of that. And I liked how I think he broke it down really good for people because there's a lot of people in there that didn't really know too much about any of that. And I think he did a good job of really putting it into layman's terms.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to get too deep into it because I'm not the guy, nor am I, quite there yet, but yeah, there's two sides of it where it's like you have to understand it as an investor, which there's a lot of ins and outs to it, but then you also have to be able to make a compelling pitch to a seller and explain it to them like a fifth grader, right? Yeah. And I think that's where we all need to try to get, because it's one thing to understand it, but then to be able to get sellers on board and make that happen is a whole nother ball game. But I'm excited. I think with how many sellers out there, homeowners have low interest rates right now, those are just going to turn into gold mines in the future. Those people that are sitting on 3s right now, as the years go on, those are going to be more and more and more valuable.
Agreed.
And there's going to be a lot of ways to tap into that. And, instead of sellers selling and just giving up that, there's going to be ways to create win-wins for investors and sellers.
Totally agree. Yeah. How long have you and Lauren been married?
We've been married a little over a year now.
Okay.
Yeah. So we moved down here in October, got married in November shortly thereafter. And
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And how long were you together prior?
Man, we were together a long time. Yeah, we did. We were college sweethearts and both very job focused, goal oriented. So we ended up, I'm a year older. I moved up to Washington, and she's a nurse. And she also does aesthetics. She runs a little aesthetics company in Scottsdale as well. So, both been always really hardworking. So she graduated later, got an awesome job down here in Phoenix, and we did long distance for a little bit. And then she ended up moving up to Spokane. So we've been together through a lot. And she's my rock. So love to have her. And I wouldn't have been able to make the jump into real estate and have as much confidence as I did without her. So, I owe a lot to her for putting up with me and being a rock for me.
Number one tip for successful relationship so far in that particular relationship. What's been the number one thing?
Oh man, keep it fun. Keep it fun. We're big on date nights, and we love just spending time with each other, and we both work really hard. So when we can carve out even an hour together to go grab a drink or take the dog for a walk, we cherish those moments. So it's easy when you're busy to not make time for those things. But we're going up to Flagstaff this weekend to snowboard and do those things. So it's just always have something to look forward to, right?
Love that.
That would be my biggest tip.
I love that. Always have something to look forward to, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard other people say that too, and what a simple thing to do, but like people don't do it.
Right.
I think in life in general, right? You got to have something to look forward to, right? Like, what do you in business? Hey, if I sell 3 houses this month, I'll treat myself. Like the amount of times me, even personally as an entrepreneur, I've achieved and not rewarded myself is ridiculous. Like in my career, I'll dude, there's been massive milestones that we'll hit and zero reward, like I just right back to the grind, like a minute later, right? Like, oh, that was cool. Right back to the grind, and like the older I get, the more I learn, like, man, I got to take myself out. Like I got to go buy myself a drink. Like I got to go pat myself on the back. Like the problems I have now are problems I prayed for 5 years ago, and you forget that somewhere along the way sometimes, I think, and we forget it in the relationships and we forget it in business, and it's cool to hear you say that.
Yeah. And I know you're a grinder, and now you have a great woman to hopefully remind you of those things.
Yeah.
So I hear you there, man.
Yeah, phenomenal. They say that I forget exactly how the saying goes, but the woman is the reason for the man who's out there banging and moving and shoving and doing it, right. It's always the person next to the person that really, like, they're the MVP, right? Like they're the one that they support you, like you said, they're the rock, and they're there when you need them to be there, and you're able to go out and do what you do, So I love that. If you were going back in 2020 2 or 1 or whatever, and you were, let's just say in 2023, actually, to keep it simple, you were a brand new agent, but knowing what you know now, you're a brand new agent, okay? So AKA somebody's watching this, they're a brand new agent. What would you do? Like, what would you do day one? If you're a brand new agent, what would the actions be that you would take, and what would a day look like for Sean?
Yeah. This is going to be a little redundant, but show up first and foremost. Just be there. You're not going to do much at first being at home. It's just the reality of it, right? So no matter where it is, show up to it and be present. And I would say line up as many open houses as you can early on, and go to as many networking events as you can, because those are free things to do, or pretty much free. And it's the easiest way to get in front of a lot of people who are going to be talking a lot of real estate, and you're going to learn a lot from that. So I think a lot of people come in and they kind of wait for business to come to them, and that just doesn't really happen, right? So that would be my advice. And I think a lot of people say, like, tell everybody that you're in real estate, which I believe in that to a certain regard. But even if you do that, then you're still kind of waiting for business to come in. So I would take a little bit more proactive approach and go find people that are talking about real estate and just get in the mix.
Yeah, the networking event thing I really like. Elaborate on that a little bit before we kind of come to a closure here. Like, what types of networking events did you start to go to? And obviously now that we're back in a place where people should be able to go to networking events, I would imagine nationwide. Where did you find the events, and what did you do when you went there? Like, what was there a strategy, or was it just like kind of make relationships with everybody that you could? What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, you can find meetups a lot of different ways. Facebook, meetup.com, right? Bigger Pockets. There's a lot going on, and the great thing, we're in Phoenix. We're kind of blessed because we have such a diverse economy, and things are always happening. I mean, you could find a real estate meetup probably every single night of the week, to varying levels, but you can find them for sure. I mean, that's not the hardest thing. But then, as far as tips when you're there, I personally like going alone. That's what I've tried to do, and it's uncomfortable to do it first, but I think when you go with one person or two people, you tend to talk to each other a little bit. And I always like going alone. You just force yourself to get out and talk to people. So, those would be my piece of advice.
How important is social media for real estate agents in 2023?
It's important. It's not going anywhere, right? And that's one that I'm trying to make a conscious effort to do better at. I went a really long time in my life, for probably 5 to 10 years, where I didn't post a lot of social media at all. to now where it's like, okay, this is going to help my business.
Yeah.
And I think it is really important. And I tend to be a perfectionist when it comes to that. And I'll spend way too much time trying to put together a video or a reel. And part of that is I just don't really have the background of doing that.
Yeah.
But every time I do, I get good feedback. So it's like, why aren't I doing this more? And for me personally, I think it's a little bit of a psychological thing just getting past. But if you're a new agent, I would say definitely got to mix in a good amount of social media. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It's evergreen content, and you're gonna put yourself out there.
It's free.
It's free.
Pace Talks. I was at an event. I was at Ryan Pineda's event, and then Pace said something, and I asked him. We went to lunch after, me and Pace and a couple people, and he was like, he said something I never heard anybody say it before, but he's like, everybody's building a brand, and he's like, and I'm like, what? And I kind of for a minute I'm standing at the back of the room, I'm like, what's he talking about,
Yeah.
And he goes on to say, he's like, all you guys who aren't posting, he's like, you're building a brand. He's like, you don't think you're building a brand, but you're building a brand. He's like, I know you for being inconsistent. He's like, that's your brand. He's like, I know you for being camera shy. He's like, that's your brand. He's like, your brand and who I know you for is somebody who's not on social media. That's your brand. He's like, so you think you don't have a brand? He's like, but you dang well have a brand. Your brand is, it's nothing, right?
Yeah.
But that's not a good brand that you want, And so, and again, I think it takes time, right? And I think people they're afraid, and like, even this podcast, right? Like, I've done a lot of this. Camera doesn't bother me. Stage, I'm still not 100% comfortable. You put me in front of 1,000, 2,000 people in public, I can do it. And other people tell me I'm really good at it, but I still get total shell shock when I do that. But the camera doesn't bother me anymore. But it took me a long time, right?
Sure.
So like, here you are though, I asked you to be on the podcast, no hesitation, boom, here we are, right? I can't imagine it was the most comfortable thing in the world, just showing up today and just sitting there and here you are, right?
Right.
What did you do to overcome the uncomfortability? Because it seems like a commonality in your life over the last couple of years, or really your whole life. You do what's uncomfortable even though it's uncomfortable. How do you do that?
You learn from enough people who that's how they found their success, right? It's like you learn that you don't make it big, and whatever big is for you can be different. That's a relative term, but by staying in a comfort zone. And I know looking back at my life, every time I've gotten uncomfortable in one facet or another, it's provided me with something moving forward. So as hard as it is, and as easy as it is not to do it, you just got to know that once you face that uncomfortability, something good's on the other end.
Yeah, I love that. So simple. It's always so simple.
It is.
Why does it got to be so simple? All right, a couple questions, and we'll wrap up. How important is golf in real estate? I have to ask you at the very end.
Oh man.
Have you sold a deal on the golf course?
I haven't sold a deal on the golf course, but I've gotten business through people that I've golfed with recently, I would say. I love golf. I think it's important when you're in real estate or any business you got to mix in things that you enjoy doing. And golfing with my buddies on Saturday isn't necessarily always going to like produce business.
Sure.
But again, there's ways to mix in golf. I go to golf networking events, and now we're playing with Keith and some of his team and a little tour that he has going on. And, there's a lot of different ways to get out in the community and do things that you like. For me, that happens to be golf. And so anytime I can mix those two in together is powerful. So you don't need to be good at golf, and I'm talking to you.
I don't know about that.
It's just getting out there and having fun, and sometimes mixing up the day-to-day is really important and gives you some clarity.
Yeah. I went golfing with a guy, and he's like, you don't got to be a good golfer. You just have to have a good attitude about it.
That's true.
And then my coach told me the same thing. I hired a golf coach, and we went out. We were on the golf cart for a minute, and he was like, hey, he's like, the main thing is you just have to have a good attitude. He's like, I hate playing with people with a bad attitude, right? He's like, I'll play with a bad player with a good attitude over a good player with a bad attitude, know? And it's funny that both people that I've talked to about it have told me the same thing, and they don't know each other.
Yeah.
So it must be a big thing out there that people don't like bad golfers with bad attitude.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, you get in a foursome with a guy that's down in the dumps, and it can totally kill the mood of a good round. Yeah, kill the vibe. So I believe in that. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, golf's hard. Golf is inherently extremely hard, and a lot of people don't golf because of that. But once you get out there and you play with people, you realize that most golfers are really bad, and that's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. So, don't let it stop you.
I love that, dude. Are you a reader?
Yes, okay. I am. I don't gobble up books like a lot of people. I do more audio books, but yeah, I try to listen and read as much as I can.
Do you have a favorite?
Oh man, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a favorite of mine.
Dale Carnegie.
Yeah. Rich Dad Poor Dad, just because I read it at a time in my life where it was a total paradigm shift for me. So that one I've always held pretty close. I like a lot of the Bigger Pockets books that have come out and been published. There's one on house hacking. There's one on creative finance. There's a lot of those. So I tend to listen to those a lot as well.
Yeah, I love that, dude. Where can people find you, Sean? If they wanna reach out to you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? The best platform? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Instagram's probably best. It's just at Sean Bozi, SeanBozi, or obviously I work closely with you. So if you hit up Austin, you hit up me as well. So that's probably the best.
That. If they're looking to buy a house, I want them to hit you up.
Yes, sir.
I'm out of the game now, man. I'm giving them all to you guys now. I don't think. I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, man, if I had like a $5 or $10 million, reach out to me right now, like would I take it or would I pass it? And I think I'd pass it.
All right. Well, I'm here.
So I'm just letting you know. we got other stuff that we got to build the companies now and make all the opportunity for everybody else. So I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, I mean, so many incredible things happening here. I'm extremely grateful not only for this opportunity but just to be working alongside you, and so excited for what the future has to hold.
We got big things coming, dude.
Yes,
this is the very beginning.
Yes, sir.
I think we could do way bigger things in the future than even just our current relationship right now. And I always think about stuff like that, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Agree 100%.
I appreciate you being on the show, brother.
Appreciate you. Thanks again.
Of course. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you are watching on YouTube, it would mean the world if you would smash the like button, subscribe if you have not already, and drop in the comment section down below. And if you're listening on any platform, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star review. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one.